Keeper Catran-Whitney. What an incredibly inspiring man. In the 1970s, 1971 specifically in Los Angeles, him and his family, the Whitney family, had a great music career. They had 3 Billboard hits. They were in Los Angeles, just singing together, and lots of tours. They get a call in 71 from perhaps the biggest music star in the world, Michael Jackson. Fascinating what he says to them. And they're going strong. They have a big record deal. And then in 1977, before they're about to sign with Motown, Motown had dropped Jackson 5 2 years earlier, or they had departed. They're about to sign the Whitney family, and the earth changes for the Whitney family. 3 bombs. Keeper will describe 3 tragic incidents happen, and they have this talk at the family meeting that would change their lives forever. From then on, it's a complete new trajectory with the family, with the sisters. There's 7 siblings. The relationship with their mother, the relationship with their stepfather completely changes. It's a wonderful story. He's created a great, great book, Helplessness, about just that, about how to help brothers that have sisters that have been harmed. It's just a wonderful story. I so appreciate Keeper's honesty and his time well spent. I come up with something as well that happened in my past that I bring out that I didn't realize or remember until reading his book and having this conversation with Keeper. But he's absolutely inspiring, engaging, and $1 million smile. Thanks so much for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Excited to talk to you, Keeper Catran-Whitney. Thank you so much for your time. Why are family secrets some of the hardest kind of secrets to keep?
Because of the stigma of other people learning about it, other people
Mm,
making judgments. And they are very difficult for that reason. There is obviously the emotional challenges that each individual family member experiences, and then as a whole, and then you have to deal with not only navigating your challenge, but when it comes to siblings and when it comes to parents, these are the closest relationships and most important relationships that we have. And in fact, when it involves your parents, these are the most powerful people that you know.
mm,
They're more powerful than any politician. They're more powerful than
mm.
any law enforcement person. These people dictate everything for you, and you look up to them. And when you are tasked with dark secrets, once you learn about them, and then being told to be silent, there's this internal battle emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And that is the biggest challenge.
So 1971, your mother's an incredible singer. You're in South Central Los Angeles. All your neighbors, everybody is, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be, this deprived. You have this talented mother that you decide to kind of get together as a family and sing, and it's the Whitney family. And I've listened to some of your songs. It's absolutely incredible. You have, I believe, around 7 siblings. And you get a call from the biggest, probably, superstar in the world. Talk to me about that day.
My goodness, you know more about me than I do. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's just jump into this for any of your audience that I imagine we're already into the interview or the conversation, it's important for people to know upfront what we are talking about can be very triggering emotionally for people. The subject is going to sit around child sexual abuse, and by
Mm,
all means, protect yourself. And I absolutely know for certain Joey agrees with me on this. If you need to back away, back away. His show is going to be here forever. Come
mm,
back, but always protect yourself. So, with that said, in 1971, as you already alluded to, my family, we were incredibly poor. And it was at a time when Michael Jackson and Jackson 5, they were blowing up all around the world. I mean, they were everywhere. And every little kid on the planet, poor, middle class, rich, wanted to be Michael Jackson. And so we were poor, as I said. I have, and as you pointed, I do have seven siblings. I have four sisters. I have three brothers. My mother and my stepfather were living in South Central LA, the home of the Crips and the Bloods, and just about everything else you could possibly imagine. We want to be them. And my mother is a singer, and she's singing with her sister and her brother, and yet knowing that that's not making enough money to help us, because I went to 11 grade schools before I graduated high school. I lived in 21 different places, homeless three times because we just could not afford to pay rent. And it was just constant moving. And so even though my mother and my aunt and uncle worked, they were amazing. They were literally amazing. It wasn't good enough. So she would hear us singing around the house, singing the Jackson Five. And then one day she said, would you kids like to sing? And of course we said, absolutely, a yes. The next thing you know, the Whitney family is born and we're singing it after hours nightclubs all over Los Angeles. One Saturday, yes, we are rehearsing and the phone rings. My mother says, I'm going to answer the phone. You guys keep going. So we're rehearsing, and then she picked up the phone and she said, hello? Who? And she looks at us and puts her finger through her lips and says, shh, Michael Jackson's on the phone. Michael Jackson, soon to be King of Pop, is calling our house. He wants to speak to the brother underneath me. And my brother gets on the phone and he's all excited. Hello? Because who wouldn't be all excited over that? And he hangs up the phone and screams, Michael Jackson said he's heard of us. Says for us to keep going. He's heard I sing and dance just like him. We will get there someday. Jeez whiz.
wow.
We are poor. We cannot eat. I am going into the streets to grab bottles to turn in to get a pound of ground beef and a bag of rice. And he's calling us. He's heard of us. Jump cut 6 years later to 1977. We're everywhere, Joey. I mean, we are blowing up.
Mm,
We are on magazine covers. We are doing interviews. We're doing concerts. We're with United Artists Records. In 1977, we have made the coveted Billboard's Top 100 not once, not twice, but three times. Album and two singles. 77 is also the year Motown completes their exhaustive search to replace Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, who they had lost to Epic Records 3 years earlier.
right.
And guess who they chose? My family. Where the Jackson 5 had one lead singer, with Michael primarily, and every now and then Jermaine would come out and do his thing, but it was Michael Jackson. It was always his show. We
Yes.
had nine, including my mother. We could do nine times what they were doing. And Motown offered us the largest new artist contract to sign with them that they offered any new group. Larger than the Four Tops, larger than the Temptations, larger than the Supremes, larger than the Miracles, larger than the Jackson Five. So that's how it all began. And 77 was magical, absolutely magical. Everything we touched turned to gold. And now here we are on the cusp of music greatness and stardom. And Motown has recognized us to be their new supergroup.
Incredible time, incredible things happening. Did you go to Motown? Did you meet with Gordy in the legendary area there?
Man, if only
I say, didn't
we
get
were
that
there.
far. Right.
We were days away It was going to be a signing on a Thursday or a Friday. And as you can imagine, days of going to parks and getting government cheese, powdered eggs, milk, as I said, going into the streets, hunting for not only food, but for furniture, for beds. You know, that was our life. We would have to go look for mattresses. And that was us. And now here we are. So this is going to happen on Thursday or Friday. The previous Saturday, my oldest sister screams
Yeah.
upstairs, "Boys, come downstairs, family meeting. This is it. We're about to learn the day." So we're all excited. And so we come downstairs. Now, earlier that day, my four sisters were going in and out of bedrooms. They were arguing. They were raised voices. They were doing what my sisters do, siblings do. And every now and then, my mother, I could hear her in one of the bedrooms talking to them, and their voices would get heated, or they did break up into smaller groups. And my mother and my second sister, and my sister, would go into a bathroom, and they'd get all heated still. I'm just thinking it's just the girls doing what the girls do. Okay, it is what it is. So I come into the living room where the family meeting is to take place. But as I enter, Joey, my oldest sister, child number three, I am number two. So
Mm.
my oldest sister, the oldest girl, is pacing back and forth in front of the archway, the entryway leading into the living room. And she's really mad. Not all that unusual, considering that, she and my mom were arguing earlier that day with my sisters, and they could really get into it, my mother and my oldest sister. I'm thinking, okay, she's mad. It's going to be one of those days, but still, we're going to sign this contract. We're going to be on our way. I like to say the bus was outside, the door was open, the engine was running, the seats were warm. All we had to do was step onto the bus, and the trajectory of our life is going to change in a matter of seconds. So I go and I into the living room, but I noticed my three youngest sisters, the three youngest of us eight. In fact, the two youngest are twin girls, are sitting in the far end of the couch, but they're not talking. They're not saying a word, which
Mm.
was odd because all they ever did was laugh and joke and tease, especially the boys. They were just so fun all the time, but here they are, silent. Hmm, what's up with that? At the other end of the couch are my two youngest brothers, and they're like me. They're quiet, but they're kind of scanning the room like, what's going on with the girls? How come they're not seeing anything? But so they're just sitting and waiting. But you could see the excitement on their face. My oldest brother standing at the far end of the couch behind my three youngest sisters, and he and I lock eyes on each other. I'm about 16. And when we look at each other, we just kind of shrug. All right, cool. So I go and I sit down on the couch between my three youngest sisters and my two youngest brothers, and I wait for my mother and stepfather to enter the room. Within about a minute, they enter. Now, my stepfather is 6'6", 250 pounds, and he wore this massive afro wig. And, uh, I'll be more than happy to send you any images of us, Joey, if you like. Obviously, you've heard some of it, so you know where
I've
to
seen
find
on
it.
the website. Yeah.
Right, right. So we have this brown recliner in the middle of the living room that clashes violently with this green carpet, but it is what it is. It's ugly. It's ripped up. It's bad. It's in bad shape, but it's what we could afford because we went out to the street to grab it off the curb someplace or some lot. So my stepfather, he sits down in the recliner and immediately bends over and puts his face in his hands. And so my immediate thought is he sick? But he doesn't say anything. He just bends over and hides his face. Wow. My mother, who's usually effervescent like her eight children, bubbly, full of life, full of energy, is not saying a word. In fact, when she walks in, her face is very stoic. But you could see she's not happy to be there, which doesn't make any sense to me. So she walks and stands in front of the large plate glass window overlooking outside. Now, our house that we have is being paid for by United Artists Records. The food we're eating is being paid for by United Artists Records. The clothes on our back is because of our contract with United Artists Records. In fact, we owe them $250,000 for the album that they produced because no one's giving you an album for free.
Right.
You've got to pay it back with your royalties and your earnings and things.
Right.
So we're, as we would say back in the day, we're in the hawk for $250,000.
Hmm.
So we're locked in. I'm a brother, and I'm about to be hit with three emotional earthquakes. Now, I live in California, Joey, and we have earthquakes all the time. I believe you're on the East Coast
I am.
because I've been to your, I've looked at your stuff. So I know you're on the East Coast. Now, out here, and we've had earthquakes like twice a week for the past 4 or 5 weeks today. We're going to have this shaking going on all the time, but these are material
Hmm.
in nature. They crack bridges, they uproot trees, they cause your home to crack, and concrete breaks, and you get some concrete, some rebar, some some glue, some spit, and you put it back together. You're back on your way on the freeway. You go back in the house. Emotional earthquakes are a different matter altogether, and my three brothers and I are about to be hit with three of them. Now, for your audience, I am the author of the book Helplessness, the emotional health challenges brothers experience once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused by our parents. It is a lot more common than you may think, and it is not locked into any particular race or
Hmm.
religion or political leaning. It's not, there's nothing that determines who gets it. It happens, and it happens all around the world. So that's for you listening. This is where we're going.
Hmm.
Emotional earthquakes, as I said, are very, very different. They grip you, they become part of you forever. There's a lot of shock and trauma that you experience. So, my brothers and I are about to be hit with three emotional earthquakes. We are about to be told things no brother could ever prepare for, things no brother ever expects to hear. What we hear with earthquake number one is our mother looks at her 8 children and says, your stepfather has been molesting your sisters for years. I'm a brother. I don't know what to do. I am in total shock. Our family? Not us. What are you talking about? And I'm really slow on the uptake about what I'm hearing because how could I prepare for this? I had no idea this was coming. And so I start dropping, but I do hear a few things like park, liquor store, apartment. Those are really the three words that I associate with that statement. It's just those three words because nothing else made any sense.
Hmm.
Our family was such that everyone we knew wanted to be a part of it. Kids want to be a part of our family. Our friends, their parents wanted to be a part of our family. It's like, you guys are so cool. You guys are the nicest people. And now I'm being told something incredibly dark. Within seconds, my mother drops emotional earthquake number two. She says, I have known all along. What? Wait a minute. You've known what all along? She has known that our stepfather has been molesting my 4 sisters for years, and By saying, I have known all along, you're saying you allowed it to happen. You empowered his actions. What? This can't be happening, not to us. We are about to we are about to ascend from abject poverty to greatness. No, no, no. This doesn't make any sense, Joy. I don't know what to do. I have no clue what other than I'm just standing there in total shock or just sitting there in total shock. I don't know what to say. And oftentimes people will tell you, which we heard a lot, how could we didn't do something immediately? We are children. We don't know what to do with this. In fact, when adults hear this, they don't know what to do. And the people that are supposed to be protecting us are telling us they're the ones doing it. I'm a brother. Me and my three brothers are in total shock. My sisters, though, weren't.
Hmm.
And of course they weren't because they've been experiencing it. In fact, it started in 1971, the year Michael Jackson called our house.
Mm.
My youngest sister, the twins, were 5, and the sister above them was 6 when my stepfather started in on them. And my oldest sister was 11. Now, Helplessness, the book, tells the story from a brother's perspective. It is the first book of its kind that talks about the trauma brothers experience and the emotional challenges we experience when we hear this. Because what really got us was not the first 2 earthquakes, it was the third one. It was the one our oldest sister, who was pacing back and forth, dropped on us when she pointed a finger at us and said, "You boys can't talk about it. It didn't happen to you. It only happened to us girls. You can't talk about it ever." And like that, relationships that were so tight, not only were we tight because all we ever did was sing and rehearse and go to school. That's what we did. And we had so much fun together. But now everything we knew about our family was broken. And being told we can't talk about it locked me and my brothers down for about 45 years. So helplessness is about how do we elevate the voices of brothers to bring us into a conversation in which we are told you can't talk about it, but you are expected to answer for your non participation. How do we bring brothers into a conversation that we are considered taboo? We are considered an inconvenient truth in the conversation around child sexual abuse, Joey, because no one ever asked the brothers, "Are you okay?
Hmm.
Do you need to talk? Is there anything you need?" We know everyone else. We know their roles and what they're feeling, but no one ever says to the brothers, "How can I help you?" Even after we have told people what has happened, no one ever thought that we were experiencing any kind of trauma or pain. So that is what helplessness is about. We look at what happens to brothers and we answer the question, what happens to brothers? And through my family story, that easily could end in tragedy, but I refuse to let it be.
Hmm.
I think it's a story that can be used to help millions of people around the world, and certainly men who are also carrying this trauma in silence.
Kipper, you also describe sometime later. Now you describe your stepfather as, I think you said, he blacked out the sun, right? 7 foot tall. You stood
Oh,
at his
okay.
chest. You couldn't see past him. He's a big man,
All right.
but you later approach him and give him an ultimatum. Which
Yeah.
please share the story.
In the immediate aftermath of what happened, my mother and my stepfather, they had concocted a way of removing themselves after everything came out. And
Hmm.
so they immediately my stepfather faked a heart attack, and my mother was in on it and got him out of the room before anybody could do anything or say anything. Obviously, I don't think they wanted the boys, me and my brothers, to start to put things together and start to, our emotional regulating was going to be completely out of whack, which is what
Mm,
oftentimes happened. And so my sisters telling me and my brothers not to do anything, not to say anything, meant we were not to act
mm,
and not to ask them anything, which is really, I get it. They were needed to protect themselves. And my oldest sister telling us not to talk was she's protecting herself and her three youngest sisters. But me and my brothers, we were made to feel that we were guilty as well, just through gender proximity, because of the person who was sexually molesting them. What he had between his legs, we had between ours. And it's oftentimes what happens to brothers and innocent men. We are uh, not invited into a conversation that's makes sense. Women dominate the narrative as well. They should, because of historically what men have done to women around sexual abuse and child sexual abuse. So it makes sense. But I'm a brother and I don't understand because the people I need to speak to just told me they wanted nothing to do with me.
mm,
But my sister said don't do anything, and my mother gave them this on her way out with my stepdad. I will handle it. I will take care of this. So I went 9 years without doing anything. But in the process, I would hear my sister's whispers. How could boys don't do anything? How come you didn't see our weeping? How come you didn't, how come you didn't hear our weeping or see our tears? I'm like, but you said don't do anything. What are we supposed to do? We certainly can't talk to you. We weren't even talking to each other. So 9 years go by. This is 1986. I'm about to be married. I'm about to marry my fiance, who has now been my wife for 38 years. This is our 38th year. 3 months before my wedding, I can't take it. I have got to do something because I'm feeling this guilt. I'm feeling the shame of not doing something. I haven't protected my sisters. I don't care that they said don't do anything. I'm a brother. I have to do something. My definition of a brother, Joey, is who has sisters. My job is to protect their honor. Whatever happens, but they're telling me no. So 3 months before my wedding, I am losing weight. I'm not
mm,
sleeping. I'm not eating because my mother brought him back into her relationship, into the house. And my sisters are saying, don't do anything. We will be okay. I'm like, oh my gosh,
mm,
this cannot be. I'm not going to get married and not be around to help them. So I decide I'm going to do something about it. I tell my fiance on a Friday or a Saturday, actually, I have to go back to the house. I have to handle something. And my fiance, who's very intuitive, says to me, is everything going to be okay? Everything all right? But she had noticed what I was going through for 3 months. She
mm,
saw the emotional turmoil I was dealing with. And I said, I think so. I think everything's going to be okay. Anything I can do? No, no, no. It's going to be okay. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow? Yeah. I got to be there tonight. Now, I had determined my stepfather one of us was going to die within 24 hours. I was going to kill him. And I didn't care about the outcome or who was going to be affected. I didn't care. My protective instincts had taken me to such a dark place, which happens to brothers. We have our self-esteem and our self-worth, and we're trying to manage our emotional situation. We're trying to regulate, but in 1977, when we learned about it, there were no tools for brothers. There were no books. There were no miniseries. There were no articles. There was no one to talk to. You could go to a library at any time in '77. You could find stuff that women could lean on, that women could access. At least other women are telling about their experiences, which allow other women to say, "Okay, I'm not the only one. I'm not alone." But there was nothing for brothers. So I'm just figuring I got to handle this, and I have determined, like I said, I am going to kill him. Years later, after I thought about it, that would have made the situation much worse for my sisters because they would have thought I shouldn't have said anything. I should have just kept quiet, which only makes it worse. There was no win in this. There was going to be no win in what I was going to do, but one of us was going to die within 24 hours. So I go to my mom's house, and there are two
Sorry, keeper
bedrooms upstairs.
keep
Yeah,
you're 26 years old at this point, right?
you
You're
got
about
it.
26. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Please, 2
Not a
bedrooms,
problem.
yes.
You just jump in anytime you want because I know this is a sprawling story. This is just the tip of what I'm of the iceberg. And by the way, all of this is in the book. I hold nothing back about my
Yes. Yes, you
shortcomings.
do.
So there are two bedrooms upstairs. And you're right. I'm 26. I'm about to be married. My mother's bedroom and a bedroom she kept for me whenever I came over. We're still being supported by United Artists Records because we lost the Motown deal. Once they heard what happened, that was done. They wanted nothing to do with us, rightfully so. So I go upstairs to the bedroom that she had for me, and I close the door. It's a warm summer night. Breeze is coming in, but I'm drenched in sweat. I am so nervous because I know I'm about to kill somebody. And quite frankly, Joey, I did not care.
Mm,
I had determined my life was forfeit because my sisters needed that. I needed to do this for me as well. So I'm in the bedroom for 2 hours and I'm lying on the bed. I'm standing up. I'm sweating, but I'm constantly going through what I need to do. But I keep coming back to I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. And then I get scared. He's so much bigger than you. He's so much stronger than you. He towers over you. He's 6'6". You're 5'8". He's 250 pounds. You're 145 pounds. You are tiny compared to him. But my sisters need this. He did this to her. He brought her into a closet. He did this to her. Oh man, I just could not deal with it.
mm.
I was in a very dark place because there was no one that I could share what I was going through. There were no therapists dealing with brothers' issues. In fact, there still are no therapists dealing with brothers' issues. So I wait and I'm listening for the sound, and then I hear it creak, and I sit up off the bed, place both feet on the floor, and I'm looking. Okay, he's coming out of the bedroom. I know he's there because during the 2 hours I hear him beating up my mom in the bedroom. I'm just hearing her slam her against dressers. I'm hearing the clanking of bottles of perfume and they're smashing. So he's just beating the crap out of her. So I know he's there. Their door opens and I get up and I place my hand on the doorknob, but I open it and I peek out and there he is. So all my courage is just it's just dissipating. It is evaporating. It is gone. And I'm thinking, okay, close the door, close the door. He hasn't seen you yet. Oh man, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. Like I said, he's so much bigger than me, but I'm about to commit murder. The instrument of his death is right next to me, leaning against the door jab. It is my favorite baseball bat, so I'm going to bludgeon him to death. So I step out of the bedroom. I finally muster up the courage and I cross the threshold and we lock eyes on each other. And he immediately smiles and says, "Hey." But then comprehension dawns on his face. He notices I am not smiling.
Mm.
No, I do not have the bat in my hand, but he could tell something's wrong. We start walking toward each other. And I know There's one place in the hall I cannot be. We have a short wall about 3.5 feet tall that overlook the stairwell. And I know once we meet in the middle, I cannot be standing there with my back against the short wall. That was job one because all he would have to do is just push me in the chest and I go tumbling down, snap my neck at the bottom of the stairs. I'm done before I even accomplish anything. So that's job one. Do not have my back to the short wall. So we get to the middle of the hallway, and God damn it, if my back is not to the short wall, and I recognize it right away, dude. Joey, I'm like, I can't be here, not here. So I start sliding to my left, forcing him to step from his right to his left, and we're right where I need to be. But I'm like, oh man, whoo, I almost blew this. So he looks down at me now. Like I said, I'm so much smaller than him. I cannot look over his shoulder. I cannot look. He's that much bigger than me. He like we we had a light in the hallway, and he just kind of blacked out all the light. That's
Mm,
all I saw
mm.
was this shadow because I'm standing. My face is at his chest. All I see is dark. He has blocked out all the light, and I don't care. But I'm shivering. But the moment has arrived. The moment is here. It is now. So I look up the side of this mountain and I say, you have 24 hours to leave this house. If you are still here by this time tomorrow, I will kill you. You will be dead. And I turn around and I walk nervously back to the bedroom and I close the door. But when I close the door, I grab the bat and I stand back with bat in hand, waiting for him to come through the door. I gave him 24 hours. I hear footsteps. And now I'm waiting for the door to open, but then I notice they're fading. So he's walking the other way, and I'm like, okay. I hear my mother's bedroom door close, and then I leave. I go outside to my little orange Fiat, and I go to my fiance, and she says to me, "Is everything okay?" And I said, "I will know tomorrow." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because I have to go back tomorrow. I have to finish it." You have to finish what? I just have to finish what I started. So I go back the next day. I have my bat in hand as I'm walking up the walkway, and as I'm about to enter the front door, I decide to leave the bat outside because I don't want to agitate the situation. But I know one of us is about to die, and I didn't care, as I said, because this was my thinking. If I kill him, he's gone, but I'm going to be killed by the state of California for premeditated
Right.
murder. Okay, at least he's gone. If he kills me, I'm dead, but he's also going to be gone for murder. And I was good with it.
Mm,
I was so good. I didn't tell any brother. I didn't tell any sister. I didn't tell anybody. In fact, I didn't tell anybody what I did until 2015 because I didn't think it was important. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm just doing what I should have done. I'm protecting my sister. I don't care. I don't care what's going to happen to them as long as he's gone. That was it. I didn't give any thought to my fiance, dude. I was about to ruin her life too. Because all she knows is that the guy she's about to marry is dead. But I wasn't thinking like that. I'm so confused. I'm in such emotional crisis. I'm isolated. There's no one for me to talk to. uh, there's just the emotional and psychological impact was suffocating.
mm.
I didn't know what to do. So I open the door and I go into the house, expecting him to be standing there with his 38, his silver 38, but he's not there. So I walk into the living room, I walk to the dining room, I walk to the kitchen, no one there, but I do hear a sound at the back of the room, at the back of the house, rather. So I slowly walk back there not knowing what I'm going to run into. And I opened the door, and my younger brother's sitting there. And I asked him, "Is he still here?" He said, "No, dude, he left after you did last night, and he hasn't been back. He's gone for the time being." So I've spoken to so many men who, like me, felt isolated. Uh, the fear and anxiety and the shame and the stigma of people knowing that there was nothing they could do for their sisters, and knowing that whoever they talk to is going to give them a lot of lip service. Dude, I would have done this. Dude, I would have done that. And my sisters didn't tell anyone because all they would have heard was, girl, I would have done this. All that is noise.
Hmm.
That doesn't help. So I am in a place that I feel pretty good, that I
Hmm.
got him out. But there was still much, much more to come. So that's the story of me being this close to murdering my stepfather.
Did your mother eventually find out? You said it's not till 2015. Did you talk about this altercation? But were there questions right away, or was it just a coincidence? They felt that he
No
left.
one, everyone just thought it was a coincidence. In fact, my sisters and brothers thought my mother got him out. I
Hmm.
was speaking to my sisters about it 10 years ago, and their response was, "Oh, I thought mom got him out the house." "Oh, you did that?" So my mother didn't even tell them what I did. My mother didn't talk to me for a long time, but she did not share what happened. She let everyone else believe she handled it.
Oh, so
So,
he told her?
oh, yes, he told her what had happened. And I think in in knowing him, because my other brothers had a really decent relationship. My oldest brother had a very good relationship, but I was the brother who was always not always there. I
Hmm.
always had a sense there was something out of place with him. And so I never invested fully in the relationship because I was always thinking something's not right. And so no one was surprised when I told them what I did. They weren't surprised. They're like, "Oh, that makes sense," because he always suspected you were going to do something. I'm like, "How do you know that?" He said, "Because my brothers would say he always just felt that if anyone was he was ever going to have a challenge with any of us boys, it was always going to be with you." So he knew.
Hmm.
He knew that I suspected and was not fully invested in him. So yeah.
You mentioned that he abused your mother. At that point in '86, when you did this, was there still abuse with your sisters? Do you feel? Do you know?
After I wrote the book, that's when I learned there was more. Yeah, yeah. My mother, she is all about image, and she continued to see him on the side. In fact, brought him back to
Wow.
be around my sisters. And one of the things that he did, um, one of the twins, he got pregnant. And my mother, as I said, was so much about image that she would not take my sister to get an abortion. She made my pregnant sister go with him, the guy who got her pregnant, to get an abortion. We were so close to living the, you know, I forget the name of the movie where my sister's daughter was about to be her sister and her daughter, which was
Hmm.
kind of crazy, you know. So that happened. Um, I learned about all this stuff much later, and as I wrote the book and I told my sisters about what I was going to do, with the book, they the sister actually got pregnant, read it, and she said everything that you described in the book is exactly what happened to me.
Mm,
Because as a brother, we can vividly imagine what is going on with our sisters. It's not a leap at all
mm,
for us to go to the darkest place in our imaginations or uh, uh, just our thoughts about what is happening to them. And my sister, who read the book, she said that everything you wrote was spot on. Even though I never told you, you got it exactly right.
hmm,
See, part of the challenge, as I said, for brothers is when we can't have the conversation with our sisters, which is our initial healing process.
mm.
It helps us understand. It gives us some sort of footing that we can at least begin to build on emotionally. When we don't have that, we go to a very dark place. There's a lot of talk about even rather mental health today, and the reason why the book is called the emotional health challenges brothers experience as opposed to the mental health challenges, which was the initial. Initially had mental, but as the more I thought about it, I said, no, that's wrong. It's not a mental health issue. It becomes a mental health issue if the emotional health support is not given.
Mm.
And I think for most people, our trauma is an emotional trauma initially. And when we can't get the emotional support, which is it's community, it's shared experience, it's conversations. When we can't have that, Joy, we go to a dark place like I did, and you become isolated in your thinking. You become alone, and in a odd way, you become very logical. And that's easier for people to deal with because when you could identify someone as having a mental health problem, you could stick them in a corner and say, go over there, go to therapy, go over here. But we get to the mental place after the emotional trauma has begun and it cannot be satisfied with support and tools and systems to help us. So that's why it's called the emotional health challenges. And mental comes second.
Mm.
Emotional trauma is first.
Keeper, you mentioned that the family just kind of knew that you would be the one that would address this, your stepfather. Why do you think that is?
My other brothers, they, as I said, had a more friendly relationship with my stepdad. I
Hmm.
didn't. Um, when I grew
How's that
up,
possible?
well, when I was little, I was a chronic stutterer. In fact, I still stutter to this day, even when I'm doing podcasts and things like this. I get to a point where I need to figure out a way to say a certain thing. So when I was little, my stepfather teased me mercilessly. In fact, got my brothers and sisters to tease me mercilessly about my stuttering. And I was called all kinds of names. And so because of that, I did not, as I said, I wasn't a fan of his. Because here you are picking on a little boy. So that's why I didn't. And he got them to be a part of his team to tease me. So like I said, I was never a fan.
Hmm.
I just wasn't. And it gave me a better read of who he is, where the others were more willing to latch on to uh, you know the niceties that he would offer them, either things or in words and things like this. I just wasn't. I wasn't down with it.
Hmm. It's from the outside, and it's easy to make these kind of adjustments. But with all the terrible, heinous things this man was capable of, he piled on top of that, picking on you. And
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you want the reader to come away with when they're reading your book, Keeper?
Well, helplessness. We explore what brothers go through emotionally. Okay. Because as I said, we are never brought into the conversation. And my story is an example of what brothers go through. And so, what I want the reader, because helplessness is book one of a three-book series. Helplessness. The next book that I'm writing now is hopefulness. How do you go from helplessness to hopefulness? And then how do you
Mm,
take that to becoming happy to where I am right now? I want people to, men especially, to know that they are not alone, that that having the hard conversation is what needs to happen.
mm,
I've been doing so many of these podcasts and interviews, Joe, and one of the things that comes out is because I'm a black man. I was asked this multiple times yesterday. I am asked the question, well, I know you're talking about brothers, but you're a black guy. So are you talking about just black men? And I'm like, no, I'm not saying brothers, like I'm on the street, I'm saying brothers. Because what we're talking about, as I said earlier, crosses race, religion, politics, social, economic standing. It crosses education. It crosses geographically across the United States. It crosses borders to other countries. It happens everywhere. And oftentimes people get hung up with who I who I am and what I look like and think I'm just talking about black guys. And so one of the things that helps them is my relationship with my father-in-law. This is the best example in letting people know this happens everywhere. My father-in-law died about 3 years ago at 95. He's white. He's Jewish. He grew
mm,
up in New York. He grew up in a middle class family. He had a great education. He had all the things I didn't have. As you know, I'm black. I my schooling was all over the place. In fact, my education, the best education I had was listening to the radio, listening to radio hosts and sports hosts talk. That's how I learned to talk. Rather crazy. So before he died, 3 years ago, my father-in-law called me and he said, I want you to come to the house. I want to talk to you. And I said, okay, Dad, I'm coming over. I'll be over there in a few minutes. I walk in the house and he says, come here. I want you to have a seat here at the dining room table. But one of the things that I noticed right away, Joy, is that my mother-in-law was not there, which is really
mm.
odd because they're always together. But this day, she's not there. So I go and I sit down and I said, hi, Dad, is everything okay? And he says, yes, I want to tell you something. My book is right in front of him. And
Yeah,
he
he read
pats
your
it.
book. Yeah.
And he says, I want you to know I understand.
Mm,
And I asked, you to understand what? And he pats the book again. He said, I want you to know I understand what you are dealing with. And so I sit back and he says, I'm going to tell you something. You cannot tell anyone until I pass away. I have only told your mother in law, my wife, this story. Okay. And I'm thinking, where are we going with this? He and I, our relationship grew so much over, the 30 some odd years. He says, when I was a little boy, about 15 or 16, we lived in New York. We lived in a two-story apartment. We were downstairs. Our best friends were upstairs. We were such great friends, our families. We never locked the doors. We could go in and out of each other's apartment anytime, day or night. One day, my mother or my father, he could remember, sends me upstairs to get something. So I go upstairs, and he has my attention, and I'm thinking, okay, what's he about to tell me? And I see a tear start to drop from his eyes. I'm like, oh, okay. I go upstairs and I go in the apartment and I don't hear anything. So I'm standing there, but then I hear a sound coming from one of the bedrooms. And I go over and I open the door. And the father of the children in that house, our friends, is molesting my sister. I watch this for a few seconds and then I turn around and I go back downstairs. And now he's full on crying. This
Mm.
is my 95-year-old father in law. I'm his black son in law. And he's telling me this. He says a couple of months later, it happened again. I never talked to my sister about it, and she never said anything to me about it. I want you to know I understand what you are writing about. And it occurred to me at that moment, Joy, that this is what I knew. It had nothing to do with race.
Mm.
It had nothing to do with where you grow up. It had nothing to do with any of that stuff. He's 95 years old and he wants someone to hear him. He wants someone to know. He wants someone to say, it's okay. He didn't need to say anything. He didn't owe anybody anything. He made a great life for himself. He was an incredible businessman, highly successful. But here he is on his way out saying, I need you to hear me. I need someone to make this okay because I never said anything. It made our relationship that much closer.
Mm.
So when people look at me and they say, is this just for black guys? I'm like, no, it is not. This happens around the world. This is what it is. So that's also a part of what I want people to get out of it is to recognize that this is a global problem. It's not a racial problem. And I also want women to understand that three of my sisters contribute to helplessness. They have written sections for women and sisters, which is an amazing thing because I did not speak to my sisters about this for 45 years. And
45
after
years.
I'm
Yeah.
in the middle of writing helplessness, I had the audacity to ask them, would they be willing to contribute after we got through some things? And they said yes, because they want sisters and women to understand that this is what brothers are going through. So you get really a full family view of this. And it also gives, law enforcement, it gives legislators, it gives counselors
Mm.
a view of what happens around this subject that they don't typically get. And one of the other things that I want people to understand, there are three main things you have to do if you are a brother when you get on the healing journey with this. First of all, you've got to accept that you are a victim. Because even though you might not be the direct victim, you are a victim. It happens in the family, it
Mm.
happens to everyone.
Mm.
And oftentimes women will say, well, your sisters are right. It did happen to you boys. You can't talk about it. And I'm saying, but I can because it happened in my family. But if this helps you, then let me share this. 6 years before my sisters were sexually abused, my older brother and I were sexually abused by our babysitter almost daily for 6 months. So I do understand. And when I tell women that, their response is like, oh, you do get it. I'm like, yeah, I get it, but I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to have this comparison of whose
Right.
problem is the worst.
Right.
That doesn't help anybody. But what it does do, it does let everyone know that I understand both sides of the sexual abuse coin, the direct side and the collateral damage. So, in a weird way, in a really awkward way, it's beneficial that I could say that because
Mm.
that's it gives me more credibility. So, understanding that you are a victim is job one, and then job two, you got to find someone to talk to about it. But be
Right.
careful because, as I said, most people they'll give you noise. I
Mm.
would have done this. You need someone who will just be quiet and let you say what you need to say. And then you can start your healing journey. Because the longer you hold it in, you can get very, very dark. and it can impact every relationship that you have, your sisters, work, women. It will impact everything, every aspect of your life, and you've got to be able to talk about it, which is really, really hard to do because who wants to share, especially if you're a guy, that this happened and you didn't know anything about it and that you couldn't do anything about it? What guy wants to do that?
Hmm.
It's very hard.
Victim, talk to somebody, and the third,
The third thing is
when you're healing.
there are support systems out there, be they
Mm.
counseling, either family counseling or individual counseling. There are resources out there. Um, but here's the challenge with that. Once I found out what had happened to me, I started looking and approaching counselors about it. And even today, uh, when I've gone to counseling or try to find someone that I can talk to, there's nothing out there for brothers about this. Absolutely nothing. You could go into, as I said earlier, you can go into a bookstore, you can go into a library, you can find articles and books, or you can find a movie of the week or a documentary or something on there about women. But for guys, 12-step programs, not even a one-step program out there. And so when I've spoken to counselors about this, they've told me I can't help you. And I'm like, how come? I'm a brother. I'm in pain. And their response every single time has been, I have never dealt with this from a brother's perspective. If you were a woman, if you were a girl, I could help you. But I don't know how to help a brother through this kind of pain. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? I am a brother. I am a man in emotional trauma. And they have all turned me away because no one ever thinks about the brothers. We
Hmm.
have to carry this all by ourselves. And so part of what I want people to know is I would love to have conversations with people who are interested in creating tools and systems. I know what brothers go through. In fact, many people have called me the subject matter expert on this because of my book. And I'm like, okay, because I'm willing to talk about it. Um,
When you
finding,
had,
yeah,
sorry,
please.
when you had that talk with your father-in-law, was he aware at all of the family dynamic as to what happened,
A
or did
little
the
bit.
book share? I see.
The book opened up everything, literally opened up everything because not only did he get from my sisters, he also got from two of my brothers who also contributed. But what he thought he knew about me just exploded, you know? And it was one of those things that made our relationship so much better, even though the time we had after that was so short,
Hmm.
because we were two men who understood. Now, he didn't talk to his white Jewish son-in-law. He didn't talk to his white Greek Orthodox son-in-law. He spoke to me,
Wow.
which is just really, really fascinating to me that
Yeah.
he would speak to his black son-in-law. And yes, there's shared experience, but how often do we not talk to people who are not aligned with us either in race, politics, religion? He really just stepped outside of all of that to say, you are a guy, we have this in common. I want to share this with you. It's it was it was a moment. And I look at what he did. He gave me a gift,
Yeah.
you know. He gave me not only the gift of understanding, but he gave me a story that I could use to share with the world. That's an example of this is not just about black guys, you know. It really broadens the conversation for everyone because it takes all that other extraneous nonsense and puts it out of the way. It means we can have a real conversation, leave all that other crap over there, Let's
Mm.
just talk as people. So he gave me, he did so much for me during the time that we knew each other, but this was completely unexpected. I love him.
Yeah, what a wonderful gift. How are your siblings today, Keeper? Look
I
at
have
that smile.
amazing relationships with three of my sisters today. One of the twins I have not spoken to in years, but even the sister who told me you can't talk about it ever, we're in a great place now. Because right
Mm,
before I wrote the book, I knew I was going to have to tell my sisters about the book. I didn't want them to be caught off guard. So I
mm,
went to them and I was so scared. I was so scared. I started writing this in 2013 and I finished it in 2023, but I was so scared, Joey. It's like I'm waiting for hell to come raining down on me. How dare you write this book? You're not supposed to do anything, but that's not what I got because time has a way of helping people evolve and give a different perspective. These three sisters said, "Of course, you should write the book. Absolutely." So I have great relationships with them. We talk all the time. We are sending goofy text messages to each other all day, every day. It is
right.
nonstop. And then two of my brothers as well. Just great relationships. So what that does, it tells people you can get through this through
Mm,
conversation, but you got to have the hard conversation. And once I did, and started writing helplessness, so many of the shackles just fell away. I have no fear about it anymore, which also means I'm no longer held hostage by it.
mm,
And when you don't talk, you are empowering the people who locked you down. So for me, the people who were I'm empowering or people we empower when we don't talk about it. And certainly my interest was the predator and my mother who was the one that was empowering him. But once I let it out, I'm incredibly powerful. I can talk about anything. I can talk about this all day because I don't want my family story to end on the dunghill of all the other families, millions of families that have gone
mm,
through this. I want my
mm.
family story to help, to empower, to educate, to let people know it's okay, and to let brothers and sisters know you do not need to be enemies. You can be allies in the fight against child sexual abuse.
And your mother and stepfather?
Well, my mother, I do not talk to because she committed so many more atrocities around this. So I haven't spoken to her. My stepfather, I needed to give my sisters closure, okay? Because I still wasn't satisfied even though I got him out of the house. So in 2021, I decided to see if I could find him because I still needed to have some conversations with him. So I'm looking on Facebook and I'm thinking, okay, could he possibly have a Facebook page? I typed his name in and God damn it, if there was a Facebook page for him. Because oftentimes predators think they've gotten away with it. I'm like, you haven't gotten away with anything. It just so happened that he lived 10 minutes from me. In December, he posts this message on his Facebook page that there's going to be a going home service for his wife who passed away. This going home service is going to take place in January, and he's invited people to come. So I'm thinking, oh, he invited me. It's at a church in Van Nuys, California. I go to the church. Now I know there's this huge service taking place for this woman, and by all accounts, she was a lovely woman. There are over 100 people there in this little old church in Van Nuys. And I bring my older brother, my older full brother. I've got about 16 half brothers and sisters, and we go to the church. I let the entire service do what it was going to do. I did not interrupt. But once the service was done, I took over the church. My older brother and I, we got in line to, because when someone passes away, there's a line of people who want to speak to the surviving. spouse or whomever. So we got in line. Now, my stepfather at this point, he's using a walker. But I told my brother the night before, I said, I don't give a damn what health condition he's in. He is going to see me today. So that's why I know he's in a walker because as we're going into the sanctuary, we see him walking around on a walker. I tell my brother, I don't give a damn. I don't care. I am doing this. So when I get in front of him, he's sitting down, and now I'm standing above him. So the roles are reversed from 1986. Instead of me looking
Mm.
up at him, he's now looking up at me. And he sees me and he smiles and he goes, hey. And then the color drains from his face.
Mm.
He is scared. He starts shaking. And I lean down and I say, your day of reckoning has arrived. It is over for you. You are about, and I'm just using all kinds of colorful language that I'm whispering in his ear. He can't move. The sun, the light has been blocked out for him. Finally, I got him where I
Mm.
want him. And I had printed an 8 by 10 picture of each of my brothers and sisters at the age that he started molesting them. And I pulled them on this manila envelope and I put it in front of him and I said, you did this to this sister, bam. You did this to this sister, bam. And the church has gone quiet. Everybody's hearing me. I took over the church for an hour and a half.
Wow.
As we were leaving, my older brother and I, a black woman comes up to us and she says, gentlemen, 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 this is not the time and the place for this, not the time and the place for this. And my brother only spoke twice the entire time was there. And this was the second time. He looks at her, who we later found out is a family therapist. She's trying to protect the guy who's molested my sisters.
Mm.
My brother says there is no right time and place for this. People in the church will start nodding their head. Yeah, yeah. So I said to her, I said, you're telling me this is not the time and the place for this. I said, you are saying the wrong thing. There's
Mm.
only one thing you should be saying. There's only one question that should be running through your mind. And I turn around and point to everyone in the church. There's only one thing all of you should be asking yourselves at this point. It's not, should I be here doing this? The question should be for each of you, did he get to my door?
Mm.
That is it. There is no other question. Did my stepfather molest your daughter? That's all you need to be asking yourself.
Mm.
Because he was calling a number of the children who came up to him his grandchildren. And I'm like, oh, no. You guys
Mm.
now know who's in your midst. You now know what is, what's around you. So I called my sisters immediately after and I told them what I did. And they were incredibly happy and thankful that uh, I finished the mission. You know, I brought them the closure that they had been wanting for some 40 something years. But I also gave myself what I needed.
Mm.
I finally became the brother they always wanted. I became the man who they always thought I could be and was. And it did a lot for my two kids. My son is like, if I couldn't imagine ever doing anything like that, but now I know because you did it. I'm so incredibly proud of you. You handled it. You did what no one else would do.
Mm.
So you've got this generational thing that happens with this as well. And so I'm able to give my son and my daughter's also very proud of me, the, you know, how this kind of thing is supposed to be handled. But I wasted so much time, Joey, man. I was silent for so long and I'm being eaten alive by it for so long. I was on the road of my father-in-law, quite frankly. I hadn't thought about it until
Mm.
now. It never even occurred to me. I was about to be him.
Hmm.
I was going to be in my 90s, 30 years from now. carrying this trauma, if I hadn't written this book, if I hadn't shared it, like, oh man, that's a trip. Wow. I had not thought of it like that until just now.
I need to thank you at so many levels, Keeper. Your book is fantastic. Learning about you, hearing your story. I mean, it reminded me, and I'll make this very brief. It reminded me of something that happened to me about 35 years ago that I haven't thought of since then. I moved my parents got divorced, and so I moved in with my mother and sister. I became the man of the house. Even as a teenager, I would get work and I'd help pay rent and everything. And then one day, so I'm a young teenager, 13 or 14, the cops show up and they say, "Your sister has been sexually assaulted." And we think it was this person. And uh, and I answered everything I could, and I go back to upstairs to my room, and punching the pillow. I'm screaming in my pillow. Why haven't I been watching this? Why haven't I seen this? And hours pass, nobody's home, and I walk to the place where I know this person hangs out, and I was just enraged. I had sunglasses on. I was just in a rage. I walked around, didn't find anybody, came back. Hours later, the cops came back and said, "We saw you there. Don't go there again." We picked him up, and he was actually put in jail shortly after that. My sister, when she got home, she was crying. We talked about it. We did bring it up several times later, but I hadn't thought about that, Keeper, in so long. And the way it affected me as a brother, we can't diminish what happened with her, of course, but there should be some focus on the brother and what happened there. And I want to thank you for bringing that back up again.
Well, let me say, first of all, I'm sorry, that your sister experienced what she experienced. Obviously, I know it multiple times over. And the connection that you and I are sharing now,
Yeah,
and it's a shared experience of knowing what it was like for you, the dark place that you went to, because there was no other outlet for you. There was no other support
mm,
for you. As a brother, we are expected to act, to just take our rage and our anger and just deliver wrath. But that's so dangerous. And like you said, you're in your bedroom and you're germinating all of this stuff and you're imagining
mm,
all this stuff, and the anger is just welling up. It is just bubbling over. And you put on sunglasses because you're going to handle this in secret. And yet
that's right.
you go there and the cops tell you, we saw you, as if they were waiting for you.
Right. Yeah.
It's really, they were probably waiting for him, but they saw you. And what could have happened that would have been so much worse for your sister if you had in
Right.
what if he had killed you?
Yeah. Some
What
kind
if
of
you had killed him?
altercation.
And then our
Yeah.
sisters, what do they take away from that? They take away
Right.
even more trauma. So thanks for sharing that, because it's one of these things where, as men, because we grew up in so much toxic masculinity, our opportunities for toxic masculinity that we tend to step into, but we're carrying this stuff in pain. I don't know if your sister's still alive, but I will share something with you. A very good friend of mine, after he read the book, called his sister right away to tell her his experience, and they were on the phone for 2 hours. This
Mm,
guy was a very, very prominent, well-known actor. And after he spoke with her, he called me and he said, "Dude, after I read your book, I just had to talk to my sister.
mm,
I just had to let her know what I have been carrying, because I'm thinking it's my fault. I've done something wrong by not handling this, even though I've been told not to." And so you may not have been told not to, but the darkness, you went to the mental place.
Yeah.
You went to that
Terrible.
isolation. You went to that,
Yeah.
I'm alone. I got a lot. I got to handle this. So you logically, you went to, I got to put on my glasses. I got to go handle this. It's a
Mm.
very dangerous place, but that's what we brothers carry. The bravery of you. I don't know how often you talk about what you just shared, but I think it's incredibly brave, and it's can be very liberating and self-empowering.
Yeah, kind of being thrust into that position. My parents were met in Queens, New York, and they took me to New Haven when I was born, so I'm in the suburbs. But I would go into the city quite often, and there's a different way of handling things in the city than there are in the suburbs. So you kind of have a little bit of both of that mentality. And like I said, I'm not a violent person, but you just kind of go into that dark place. Um, and we're both fortunate nothing happened. Is there anything in recent history, Keeper, like in the last month or so, that you completely changed your mind on? That you kind of were
As,
focused on something and you changed your mind on something,
as it relates to this,
just
or
in
just
general in
anything.
life, anything?
Yeah, um, I I used to think that because of who I am and what I've gone through, that I was just going to have to just always carry this stuff in a dark place.
Mm,
And yet, within the past month, I have done, in fact, I have done so many interviews um, that I used to think sharing this story with women would not land as well.
mm,
But I have completely changed my mind on that because the more women interview me, and that's usually who interviews me now, are
mm,
women. They
mm,
want to know what they can do for their brothers. And so I completely changed my mind on that.
hmm.
2 weeks ago, I was interviewed by a 16-year-old girl for her podcast.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, okay, you want to talk to me about this? She said, yes, because I went to your website, I watched videos, I downloaded stuff, I've seen some of the other podcasts. I need to talk to you. So that changed my mind about the scope of who this is because I asked her, I said, why are you finding this story fascinating? She said, because in my high school, this sort of thing that you're talking about, the child sexual abuse, happens all the time. I have so many of my friends who have experienced this. And so I want to talk to you about it because no one else is out there talking about it from your perspective. Completely changed my mind. And because I did her podcast, educators are now contacting me. Can we talk to you about your story? So it just completely changed
Great.
my mind. Women and then young people want to know more and more and more about this conversation.
I find that so refreshing because in this world where so many times people are so polarized and they kind of dig in, and it's refreshing. I leave myself open to thinking I can change my mind on any subject given new evidence. So many times we hear this is the way I am and that's it, and I don't want to
Yeah,
hear anything else. But it's important that we are able to adapt and be open about certain
absolutely.
things. So, I started my business in the 90s, Keeper, and I was working way too hard. I was working 15, 16-hour days, not paying attention to myself, eating poorly, sleeping late. I'm at the doctor's office and she tells me I got up to 340 pounds. Right. So I'm
Oh,
46. Yeah, I'm 46-inch waist. So I'm, 200, 195, 200 now, 32-inch waist. I was 340 pounds, 46-inch waist. And she says to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. My daughter was just born. So very similarly, I'm driving home angered at myself. It's not just me now. How could I do this on myself? It's very selfish of me to not take care of myself. I have this family I need to take care of, my daughter, and I have a family now. So I took the next 6, 7 months, lost about 130 pounds, and I kept it off. You can't look at it as a finishing line, right? We've got to keep moving forward. You can't go back to the bad habits. People want a quick answer. What's your secret? Like there's no secret. Of course, there's the one word answer is how do I do it? How do I keep doing is discipline. I got
Right.
focus, I got a routine. That's how I wonder, given your remarkable life, how does discipline play a role in your life, Keeper?
Discipline is incredibly important. Well, let me, like you, I love fitness.
Mm,
Okay. I absolutely love it. But around this, the discipline is always about being mindful of who I am and regulating my emotional state.
mm,
Because at times I see things and I hear things and I can easily get angered about it. And so the discipline is, first of all, keeping me emotionally regulated. Second of all, is I have to keep myself busy. If I'm not busy, I will go to that mental place. So I have to be
mm,
very disciplined about that, taking those steps, listening to self development, listening to great speakers, listening to other people's experience. It's that, and so that I understand I'm not alone. What other people are experiencing, I have may not be the same thing, but I have very similar experience. So I have to be very disciplined. I have to stay on task.
mm,
It helps me not get lost in my head, which I think that's just one of the hidden things about discipline that we don't talk about a lot is that it helps you stay out of your head. It allows you to be open if you are willing to do or accomplish something. The discipline, like you had to be disciplined about your eating, be disciplined about your exercise. I had to do the same thing.
mm,
Uh, I am 65 years old. I'll be 66 in about 2 months. And I realized about 5 years ago, if I want to see my grandchildren, I need to be disciplined about the way I take care of myself physically.
mm,
So I
mhm,
started exercising. I got myself to the gym and I did what I needed to do because life is going to take away a lot from us, regardless of what we do. But I'll be damned if I'm going to help it. So I exercise every day. I read every day. I pour into me every day. That's just a discipline thing that I have to do. That is, that's my discipline.
mm. Do you still sing now? Are you still involved with music?
Not so much anymore. I have a sister who does, but the rest of us have kind of moved on. What has happened is that around this book, there's a screenplay now being written
Awesome.
about it. So where I thought my gift to the world was going to be singing and we were going to be doing all this great stuff, ended up not being that. It ended up being
Mm,
this. And in a weird way, I
mm.
believe this, Joey. I was brought together with my 7 brothers and sisters and my mother and my stepfather to go through exactly what we have gone through.
Wow.
We were brought here to go through this together so that our story could help other people. And it's really weird to think of it like that, to say, oh boy, there's such a benefit to what we went through because it was so horrible for years. One of my sisters was sex trafficked because we needed a
Mm,
car, and my mother gave her to this rich Arab guy to spend the night with her. So we ended up with a new car because of it. It's just so much craziness that happened. And so for me to look at it in that with that view that we were brought here together to go through all this so we could help other people. I talk about this all the time because that if I don't, it's a tragedy.
mm.
No one can help. No one will learn from it. Other brothers like you, we don't talk about it.
No.
We're just alone, and other sisters. won't notice what their brothers have gone through. So, like I said, it's weird, but I think what we that's why we were brought here to go through. It wasn't for Motown. That just gives it a bunch of color. That gives my
Hmm.
story this. It really creates this great cinematic thing. And yeah, it might help, sell a movie or any series, which is what they're talking about. But at the end of the day, it's about helping other people.
What motivates you, Keeper, now?
This,
Hmm.
this, elevating the voices of brothers, bringing us into a conversation of, that we are not allowed to participate in. It is my motivation. Like I said, I've been married to my wife for 38 years. This will be year 38. She's fantastic.
Hmm.
She's the one who pointed out to me that I'm a victim.
Hmm.
I had no idea. One day we are sitting as I'm writing the book. We're sitting in bed, and I'm telling her a story about what I'm writing about this section, about one of my sisters are going through, and she says to me, you're a victim." And she's looking at me like, I look at her. No, I'm not.
Hmm.
Yes, you are. Of course, you're a victim. And I'm looking at her and Dory, and I'm saying, no, I'm just telling you what's going on in the book. And she says, how can you not see you are a victim?
Hmm.
All of you boys are victims. Look at you. You're shaking. You're sweating. You can't even tell the story. She saw that. I didn't, which means other people saw it. But she's the one who said something. So that conversation changed who I am and what I'm about. It
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
cemented, along with my father-in-law's story, this is what I'm here to do. This is my motivation to do this. And then 6 months ago, our first grandchild
Congratulations.
arrived. So my motivation is to continue to tell this story, but to stay healthy because I will be here. I am Pop, and Pop is fun, and that's all you need to know. So those are my motivations. This story, my family, and especially my new grandson.
Mm. Boy, the smile on your face is, oh my goodness, it's wonderful. It lights up the room, Keeper.
This easily could be a story that replicates itself and usually does.
Mm.
This sort of thing. It's really generational, and that's where because the brakes are never put on.
Right.
There's nothing to slow it down. And what slows it down? What are the brakes to this sort of trauma is conversation, and no one ever has it. You know, so by me talking about it, my son and his wife they talk about it, and it's a pretty open conversation. But me talking about it has stopped the generational trauma from happening.
Wow.
And that's just one of the benefits of sharing our stories and you sharing your story. Obviously, I don't know what your family dynamic is, but having these conversations bring about really important conversations and they're educational for everyone. And it certainly makes
Mm.
men more vulnerable. It makes our children especially our sons, say, okay, I don't need to be this hard ass all the time. If my father can have this kind of conversation with me, if my father can have this conversation where he's emotional and he's crying and he's okay, then I can do the same thing. And so my son will no doubt do the same thing with his new little boy.
Yeah, you're right, Keeper. Hurt people generally hurt people, right? And it's important to try to stop that. So, given
Yeah.
that motivation, how do you measure success?
My success, I measure it in a very simple way. I just ask myself, am I happy?
Mm.
And when I say yes, I am successful. I am happy. And I'm happy. If you had told me I was going to be happy 20 years ago, I would have said no because
Mm.
I'm carrying all this darkness. But I'm happy. Success for me is talking to someone like you, inviting me to come on to your show, and I could share my experience. It makes me incredibly happy. It makes me incredibly self-empowered, and so that's how I measure success. It's not about the material stuff.
Mm.
It's am I happy with me? And I remember about 30 years ago, in a previous house, I was having a really hard time one night, and I had woken from a sleep around 1 o'clock, and I'm just thinking about all the stuff that has happened to my sisters and what I did and didn't do and all that stuff. And I got out of bed and I went into the bathroom and I just looked in the mirror and I just looked at myself and I said, you know, you're a good guy. You are a really good guy. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You know who you are. And that kind of set me on the path to to my own personal success. Am I happy? Am I doing the right thing? Do I tease people a lot? Yeah. Do I have fun at other people's expense? Whenever I can, all day.
In good
Uh,
fun.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. In good fun, and it happens all the time. But that was a pivotal moment for me, telling myself I'm a good guy and just letting whatever anyone else says about me otherwise, I don't care. I'm a good person, and I go forward with that, and certainly with that intention.
Keeper, I want to thank you so much for your time, for writing this book, telling your story. It's incredibly brave. It's healing. It's going to help others. It's helped others. It's just incredible. I hope next time I'm in the greater Los Angeles area, we can get together, have a cup of tea. Whoever's listening, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, certainly the best way to get in touch with me, if you're interested in the book, is to go to Amazon, obviously. You can go to my website, keepercatran-whitney.com, and there's a lot about our music. There's a lot about this story, and their downloads and clips and trailers and things. But if anyone wants to reach me directly, they can reach me at keepercw.author@gmail. I do a lot of speaking, um, groups all the time, all over the world. I do a lot of that, and that's the best way that people can reach me. And if they forget, they can always come to you. You know how to reach me.
That's
You're you'll be a great resource. I would love to meet you in person. I really would. You just seemed like I don't care what anyone else says about you, but you just seem like a nice guy.
Ha! Ha! There it is.
There it is. You're gonna have to
There
go
it
to the
is.
mirror with that one. Tonight around
There it
one
is.
o'clock, go into the mirror, go to the bathroom. No, I'm a good guy. I don't care what he says.
Keeper is spelled Keeper, Catran, Catran, Whitney, Whitney. KeeperCatran-Whitney.com. We'll make sure to put it in the show notes. Keeper, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to having that cup of tea with you.
So do I, my friend. You take care.
You be well. Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.